The most important part about any reptile is taking care of it properly. But at the end of the day, reptiles cost money. And today, we're going over the top 5 reptiles that will be way more expensive in 2023. My name's Adam, this is Diamond, you're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles. Stick around. If you've ever bought a reptile, which you probably have if you're watching this, you know that they cost money. Most of the time. I mean, there's rescues and things like that. And if you've been around the hobby for, say, 5 or 10 years, you've seen certain reptiles get more or less expensive. So the interesting part is to predict, right? This is what breeders do all the time. What is going to be more expensive? What can I get my hands on now that's going to be more expensive in the future? Well, I'm going to play that game right now, starting off with number 5. Woma Pythons. Now, Woma Pythons are already not that cheap in the first place, and they have been rising in price, but I don't think that they've peaked yet. And I think that black-headed pythons are kind of like a crown jewel. They're one of the things that, of all python species, it's one of the most sought after ones, but they're pretty expensive. Now there's 2 Aspidites is the family. There's Woma Pythons and black-headed pythons. Black-headed pythons, good lord. Black-headed pythons. It's always good to go through puberty as you film videos, that was fun. Black-headed pythons are much more expensive than the Woma Pythons normally, basically always. And Woma Pythons now, in my area anyway, $300 or $400 is pretty common for them. And I think you're gonna see them start to rise in value. I think especially because people kind of realize, although there are differences, they're very similar, black-headed versus Woma Pythons. Womas don't have the black head. They're actually called shield head in Latin because they have a really big crest thingy scale, whereas the black-headed pythons have an all-black head. Black-headed pythons get a little bit bigger. Both of these have very aggressive food drives, and when I say aggressive, I don't mean they're aggressive snakes, like they're trying to bite you. They're trying to bite food, and they want to bite things that they think are food, and both of them have amazing food responses. Something very interesting also, they're the only python family, these 2 in the Aspidites family, that don't have heat pits. So, like a ball python, if it sees your hand and it sees a cold mouse and it smells the mouse, it's probably going to strike your hand because that's the heat signature that it gets. Where with the Aspidites, with the black-headed pythons and the Womas, they don't. But also it's because they cold-blooded prey in the wild. Okay, enough. I think that they're going to get more expensive because people are going to realize how cool and unique they are. They get about 4.5 feet, somewhere around there on average, right? Could be a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger. The care for them is really, really simple. If you're in Australia, you can keep them too. If you don't know, people in Australia can only keep natives for the most part. So this is inclusionary for basically everybody. And just overall, I think if you're looking for a snake that's a python that looks very cool with the banding and the color variation, acts very interesting, is active, is fun to handle, not too big, easy to feed, easy to take care of. Really, there's very few as cool as Woma Pythons, and once people get onto that and understand that, they're going to start getting more expensive because the demand is going to far outweigh the actual supply, what's available. Let's move on to number 4. Blackbreasted leaf turtles. Now, if you're wondering, Adam, why would these things get expensive? I've never heard of them. What the heck are these things? Well, because you've got guys like Mike Titula and Dayyan from Reptiles running their mouths about how awesome these are, because they are. I mean, these are really cool. I didn't know what these things were, but those are my buddies and I watch their channel. And now I want some. I mean, they're freaking amazing. And I think that there's so few of them, especially here in Canada, but being that you're probably watching this from the US or somewhere else, I think that there's probably very few where you live too. Now, they're a terrestrial species, right? Like they do need a water dish and they like it kind of humid, but they're like a wetter box turtle, a wetter, way cuter box turtle, in my opinion. Now, they come from parts of Asia, Vietnam, and places in that area, that general area. And I think that it's really interesting because they're tiny, like really tiny. Like we're talking about 5 inches. Now, these are an endangered species, so you're gonna want to get them captive bred for sure. And there's not a lot of captive breeding going on, and they're only gonna lay 1 or 2 eggs at a time. So it's really difficult to populate quickly. So once the rise kind of comes up and the popularity starts to come up, it's going to be difficult to get them in as many hands as necessary because of the demand. And therefore, it's going to be a contest of who can pay the most money for them. This is how basically everything works in life, but definitely with reptiles too. Also, they're insectivores and they're absolutely adorable when they eat. These things are the freaking cutest. Number 3, Roll Boas. Now, I talk about Roll Boas a lot, and they've already risen in price, but they're not at the peak yet, in my opinion. Very quick synopsis, I've said this before. I bought my first Roll Boa in 2020. This was like, I think the week the pandy started, you know? So I went and bought one from somebody. It came with an enclosure and substrate and like everything inside of it. It was like $200 or $250 Canadian, right? So like $6 American. And now that's just not a thing anymore. At all. Like, I just sold one of my larger Roll Boas because I had 3 males and I don't need 3 males. The one that was sold to me as a female, I mean, it was like $600 that I sold it for, plus the shipping. So, and this is like a good price. People are selling them for $800, $900 sometimes. Now you can get deals too, but the popularity is going up. And because these animals have to be 3+ years old, like at very minimum to breed, because they're very slow growers. The one that I've had for 2 years and she was a year old. She's 3 years old now. She's nowhere near ready to breed yet. So again, you're gonna see this rise in popularity like you've already seen, and the animals that are around right now are going to be very expensive. And as we get closer and closer to having the ability to breed more of them, because the babies that you bought when they were kind of cheap and now you're raising them up, and eventually you're gonna see an explosion of availability, right? I think All Canadian Reptile Girl just had some babies. Good for you, that's awesome. You're gonna, be able to sell them for a decent price. Eventually, of course, that supply is going to catch up to the demand, but it's not going to be in 2023. In 2023, these are going to continue to rise, continue to get more expensive, and maybe you'll see the peak there, but if I had to guess, the peak is going to be mid-2024. If you want one, seize the day. Make sure you have the best enclosure first. Watch this video right here about how to take care of them, find out why they're so underrated. But, and if you like feeding snakes, these are the bulldogs of the snake world. Roll Boas are one of, if not the strongest pound for pound snake that I've ever handled. When they hit a rat at the end of the tongs, it feels like Mike Tyson punching what's at the end of your tongs. They are crazy strong, crazy quick. I love these guys, but very gentle in their disposition when you want to handle them. And they're a perfect size. I mean, 6, 7, 8 feet, maybe 9 if you get a really big female. But all of mine are right around 6 or 7 feet, or the 2 that I had that were full grown. And yeah, like they grow slow. So if you get a baby, you're not going to blink and it's going to be 9 feet. It's going to take a while. You'll get used to it as it goes. Number 2, I always ruin a list with an amphibian, glass frogs. So this is something that was brought to my attention because I've been looking for glass frogs for about a year, right? It's September now when I'm filming this. Last November, I went to Costa Rica and I fell in love with glass frogs. Like, I knew they existed before, but I didn't realize how freaking cool these things were. Come on, Diamond. I didn't realize how interesting they were. We got to see some in amplexus, so that means they're actually breeding. We found granulated, like on the underside of a leaf. It looked like it was staged. Oh, I wonder if we'll find a glass frog, and then there it was. Find this right here, just on a whim as we leave. That's pretty darn cool. The reason they're called glass frogs, because there are many species, but many of the species have an underbelly, their belly, underbelly. Why is it called an underbelly? All bellies are under, aren't they? Because their bellies are translucent and you can see the organs inside of them. Glass frog, makes sense, right? Now these are tiny frogs. They're a little bit fragile, but if you know how to take care of, I don't know, red-eyed tree frogs or something like that, they're not the same, but they're that level of care in my opinion. They like it humid, they don't like it not too warm. Their calls are kind of cute, right? Like it's like a chirping almost. And you can keep a bunch of them in the same enclosure. Do your research on how to do this. Don't just throw them in there. And they're insectivores too, which like insectivores are pretty easy to feed. The reason they're gonna get more expensive is because they are being listed as a CITES species, which means that to import them or export them from where they're from, Costa Rica, Central America, parts of South America too, basically what that means is it's way more difficult to bring them in from where they're from, Central and South America, so the price is gonna go up. Perfect example, monkey tail skinks. Once we stopped importing or exporting from the Solomon Islands monkey tail skinks at the rate we were before, the price went crazy high. Monkey tail skinks used to be a couple $100. Now they're $1,000 plus every time. And I think you're gonna see that with glass frogs, because glass frogs right now are like, I don't know, 40 or $50. If you're in the US, you're gonna see them rise. Oh, by the way, we launched new merch. So the link is like right here and in the description. So if you want, anyway, I think these are freaking cool. So, all right, that's enough self-promotion. Let's get on to number one. Number one, tree monitors, especially green and blue tree monitors. These are, I always say, oh, this is the most interesting, special, like truly, these are some of the most interesting, beautiful animals on this planet. I was very lucky to go get to see Reptiles' collection a while back, and the way he interacts with them, like, I get it. And they've already risen in price wildly. Like, I'm talking from 2020 to now, it's at least $1,000 difference because they weren't cheap in the first place, right? But now the export from Indonesia, the rules that they're trying to set in place is that you can't export wild-caught ones. You can only export ones that were bred in captivity there. So how that works, who knows? It's Indonesia, right? Just saying that we're not there, so who knows how it actually works, but that's the way that it's supposed to be. So there's already a little bit less availability because you can't just go out in the wild and get one and ship it over. And captive breeding here in North America, Europe, things like that, is few and far between, although we are ramping that up. There are people who are doing it, and they aren't really the most prolific breeders in the first place. So I think you're going to see again the demand, which is already there, and they're already getting more expensive, but you're going to see them get more and more popular, in my opinion, because you do have guys like Dayyan and Reptiles showing them off. There's guys like me who, if I ever see one, I'll put it into a video. They're not super big, you know, like 3-foot monitors. They're arboreal. Most monitors will use their tails to like tail whip stuff. These guys, because they have prehensile tails, as they're arboreal, will protect their tails. So they're mostly insectivores, although they'll maybe eat other carnivorous type things, eggs and small animals. They're just very unique amongst other species, and they're not huge in terms of monitors. Monitors are really cool, but most people can't take care of even a savanna monitor, which is, 4 feet or bigger, never mind a water monitor or something else. So I think these are just a great option for people who want to get into monitors and have done tons and tons of research, because no monitor are beginner species in my opinion. But anyway, that's it. Those are your 5. They're going to be way more expensive in 2023. Let me know what you think. Do you think I'm right? Do you think that there's other species that'll get more expensive? Should we do a part 2? Let me know in the comments section below. As always, if you hit like and subscribe, it changes the way this channel is seen. Thank you so much for doing that. Honestly, thank you so much. And a special thank you to the Patreon supporters. You guys are freaking amazing. Appreciate all you guys do. I think we just started doing a few vlogs just for Patreon. There's gonna be extra videos, more of them coming, right? We've got some editors helping us out now. And yeah, you get discounts on the merch. You guys got access to these before everybody else. You know about the trips that we're going on, international trips at the end of the year. You know about the really cool things that just hatched. Anyway, for as little as $1 a month, you can be part of that too, and I've rambled long enough. That's it, because I do videos on Mondays and Thursdays. That means that I'll see you in the next one.